And the great whore that sitteth upon many waters represents America, because Babylon the Great, which is America.
Yeah, because you have certain Christians that say that it's talking about the Roman Catholic Church. It's not talking about the Roman Catholic Church. It's talking about the land of America. This is Babylon the Great. And when you read down, you're going to see it.
And I'm jump to the 15th verse real quick. It says, and he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest where the whore sitteth are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. Because the scriptures say that the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, that represents all the mixed people here in America, that melting pot.
Ain't nobody dreaming about going to the Vatican City, unless you're a Roman Catholic. Ain't nobody saying, oh, I'm going to Vatican City, man. Nah, people from other countries, they want to come to America, all right?
That's right. It says, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of a fornication. And you can see that when you go to these different countries, they all have McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts, Burger King, all different types of things that you have here in America.
Which means they have GMOs. Because McDonald's is primarily made up of GMOs.
Well, now McDonald's is doing so bad that they're closing up shop. So now they're trying to go all natural, because everybody wants to get into non-GMOs and certified organic and so forth, healthy stuff, gluten-free, because ain't nobody buying that shit. Everybody's trying to get on that health tip, so nobody goes to McDonald's anymore. So now all of a sudden McDonald's want to be healthy, man, but it's too goddamn late. You couldn't pay me to go to McDonald's, man. That's right. You couldn't pay me to go to McDonald's.
It says, verse 3, so he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And this is a thing of this particular chapter in Revelation 17 is like an allegory. It's symbolic. So the woman is speaking about Babylon the Great, which is America, sitting upon a scarlet-colored beast. That scarlet-colored beast represents those European nations, NATO and the EU, which are allied with America. So they're carrying America because America came out of those European countries, namely in England. It says full of names of blasphemy because they say.
If I may add to the EU, that's nothing but a revival of the Roman Empire. Because the program that the EU is pushing is based upon the old Roman Empire.
That's right.
So that should be mentioned too.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Full of names of blasphemy, because they're saying they're Christians. They're saying that they're the Most High. This place is what really exalted that image of Caesar Borgia. It says having 7 heads and 10 horns, and the 7 heads represent the 7 major kingdoms of Esau, which is the Greeks, the Romans, the French, the Spanish, Germania Major, Germania Minor, and Britain or England. Those are the 7 heads, and America came out of those 7. I believe so. The Greeks, the Romans, the French, the Spanish, Germania Major, Germania Minor, and Britain, England. So those are the.
Now you got other clowns such as Nate that'll say Russia's in there. He'll go, the Greeks, the Romans, the Spanish, the French, the Germans, the Russians, and the British. You know where he got that from? He got that from One West.
That's right.
And they broke it down wrong. All right? Russia didn't have nothing to do. Russia wasn't even in power back then, man.
That's right. Russia
came along later.
And the Russians are still being defined against the EU.
Well, the NATO, the reason why NATO was assembled was to take these different nations, and they made an agreement, a pact that they considered how powerful Russia was, and basically they said if Russia attacks any one of these nations, the rest of these member nations have to come together to fight against the Russians. So let's say the Russians attacked France, then the U.S. would have to be involved in it. The German would have to be involved in it. All right, Greece and so forth would have to be involved in it. And then you mentioned Greece with this financial situation that they're in, this austerity situation. That goes back into Daniel, the 2nd chapter, where it speaks about the 10 toes, partly strong, partly weak.
Which Nate couldn't break down.
He couldn't break it down
correctly.
You know? And that's one of the weak ones. Partly weak is Greece is one of them. You know.
Yeah, and the reason why it's like that today with the friction between the Russians, that's a catalyst, or that will be a catalyst for World War III. Because they're trying to make the Russians bow down to their will, which is not going to happen. And what's going to come out of it? Nuclear missiles. All right?
Which Elder Tara spoke about the 10 toes. The ending of the 3rd verse says, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and those 10 horns represent the EU, the European Union, which was called the European Economic Community, the EEC. And then they changed it to the EU, the European Union, which is nothing but the same European member nations as NATO. You know, they just added more to NATO. You know, and there was supposed to be 10, which it started with 6 when it was first set up. But then when the headquarters building was set up in Belgium, there was 10 flagpoles erected in front, true to prophecy of the 10 horns. But then when they realized that, whether they did that on purpose or not, then they started changing it and made it 12, and then started adding more members to it, more European members. It says, and the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of a fornication. Because when John saw this vision of this woman, she was actually dressed in this apparel, and she looked gorgeous to him in the well, not gorgeous. She looked like a fine woman dressed in red with purple color. She was stunning, right? Desirable. She was a desirable woman when he actually saw her in the vision, and that represented America. Why? Because at one time, all nations looked at America as this like you got, if you can have a bunch of prostitutes on the corner. Usually, a man's gonna go for the finest one, the one that looks the best. You know, so America was looked at as that beacon of light, you know, that golden city, that place where you want to be at, you know, and all nations wanted to come to this place, and that's the reason why she was arrayed in this clothing, because of the air, or that stunningness or spectacular way that these nations looked at on this place as, because they knew they could come here and make money.
And you notice
she
that
was
scarlet,
alluring.
Notice that scarlet is red, because America's built upon blood.
That's right.
You know, the purple represents royalty, and the scarlet represents blood, man. Because truth be told, America was built upon blood. Let's start with so-called North American Indian. How the so-called white man got America? First, he had to destroy them, or try to destroy them. He shed many of their blood. You know.
Yeah, I want to read something. This is from, I'm not going to read the whole story, but you can read it. You can go to RT, the actual website, RT.com, news. And there's a story entitled World War III will start with Pentagon bombing of RT. RT is the news company. Now, when you go into it, right? All right, it says award-winning